everybody. Good evening. Welcome to the fourth episode of Hannon's Canon. It is Thursday, January 25th, year of our Lord, 2024. I'm your host, Dennis Hannon. I'm joined with John Restano, my co-host. How are you, John?
I'm good, Dennis. I'm good. I'm happy to be here and to learn some stuff tonight. Can I remind the viewers of something? We have the STAR program. So if you're out there and you like this show, you like what Dennis is doing, think about 99 cents. That gives us 100 stars. If we collect enough stars, we get some opportunities through Facebook, and that money can all go into making us look better and doing things more, maybe, who knows. But it helps us definitely make everything just look better, sound better.
Absolutely. We're on a shoestring budget here too, folks, so that helps. Any little bit helps. So we got an exciting two topics tonight. We're going to start with the silent coup in Poland. John, did you hear about that? I'm guessing you didn't because I called it silent, so you probably didn't.
No, I did not.
Yeah, so Donald Tusk became the new prime minister of Poland. He became their new prime minister 2 months after their national election, despite the ruling National Conservative Law and Justice Party, which is referred to as uppercase P, lowercase I, uppercase S. The Law and Justice Party was actually the most voted for party. However, he was able to receive a majority vote by the way of coalition in the lower parliament. So what was the first thing that he did? He ushered in the European Union globalist policies. He appointed a LGBTQ activist and appointed them as the Minister of Family. He shut down opposition TV channels. He actually shut down their state media channel. In addition to that, he arrested several members of the opposition party, the Law and Justice Party. Two of those members were MPs, and they were actually already pardoned for previous crimes that they were convicted of. However, there were several other people that he had arrested as well. People took to the streets, they protested, they stopped the protests, they arrested the protesters, and their state-run TV went dark for quite some time. And then the next thing he said was he called for a world mobilization to help Ukraine. He vowed loyalty to the European Union and the United States, in addition to all that. So kind of scary stuff, because now we fast forward a little bit, probably, when was the date on this? About a week ago, the NATO military commander said, quote, "We are preparing for a conflict in Russia." And I'm going to cut that clip right now. We're going to tie this all together. So this is NATO Rob Bauer.
To have water, you need to have a radio on batteries, and you need to have a flashlight on batteries to make sure that you can survive the first 36 hours. Things like that. That's simple things. But it starts there. The realization that not everything is plannable, not everything is going to be hunky-dory in the next 20 years. I'm not saying it is going wrong tomorrow, but we have to realize it's not a given that we are in peace. And that's why we have the plans. That's why we are preparing for a conflict with Russia and the terror groups, if it comes to it, if they attack us. We're not seeking any conflict. But if they attack us, we have to be ready.
Remember those words, if they attack us, okay? I'm going to play another clip because in addition to what Donald Tusk did, was he also enacted a new law that changed their conscription for reservists or people that are summoned for active military duty, any citizen out there. This is a clip from a citizen in Poland talking about this. We'll play this clip next.
But we have the same story going on because this is getting more and more intense. 6 hours to report to the army or you go to prison. There is a new regulation of the Ministry of National Defense of Poland. From January 13th, which is yesterday, a new model of the conscription card will come into force in the event of mobilization and during wartime. Are we ready? The changes in this formula are not large, but, for example, the information about the penalties for the failure to report to the army in such situation has been more prominent. What are the penalties? I'm not going to read you the entire article, but some important parts. As always, like I always say, the link is down below this video in the description box. What are the penalties? Whoever, during mobilization or war, being called up for active military service, does not report for the service at the specified time and place shall be punished with imprisonment for a period of not less than 3 years.
Okay, so that was a few days after the NATO military commander Rob Bauer said we're going to prepare for a war with Russia if they attack us. Okay, so now what we have at our current state and time, as of today, we have a mobilization of 90,000 NATO troops training in Operation Steadfast. This has been the largest, it will be the largest exercise since the Cold War. They're going to have more than 50 ships, from aircraft carriers to destroyers, that'll take part, as well as more than 80 fighter jets, helicopters and drones, and at least 1,100 combat vehicles, including 133 tanks and 533 infantry fighting vehicles, according to NATO. Now, what's interesting about this is, according to the statement from NATO, they said during the second part of Operation Steadfast Defender, a special focus will be on the deployment of NATO's quick reaction force to Poland on the alliance's eastern flank. So it sounds like Poland is going to be the Poland Express, pun intended, for NATO involvement in Russia. And just to help people visualize this, because our geography isn't always the best, we're going to pull this up. So we have Poland over here. We have Lithuania, which is a part of NATO, Latvia, and Estonia, which are all NATO-backed. Okay, Belarus has long been known to have a Russian military presence. The Belarusian president over there is he's very cozy with Vladimir Putin, we'll put it that way. Several weeks ago, they actually just announced moving nukes over into Belarus. Now, I don't know if that was just a rumor or if that was something that actually happened. However, there is a large military presence in Belarus. So they're talking the eastern flank, which would be more towards the bottom of Belarus near Warsaw. Now, for training purposes, you would think that if you didn't want to cause provocation, you would use one of the Baltic states, which are the highlighted countries that I have here in blue. They're already a part of NATO.
Right.
So according to that, the eastern flank, it sounds to me like they're going to be training right up against Belarus. I don't see that as a preventative. To me, that's a provocation. And the reason why is Putin has always been very outspoken about NATO expansion and Western expansion. Think of it like this. I'm not a Putin supporter by any means. Okay. However, how would you feel if instead of Canada and Mexico, we had Iran?
Right.
The walls are closing in. NATO's expanding. That's partly why Ukraine, for other reasons, hasn't joined NATO yet. NATO is at his doorstep. Just a few days ago, there's been GPS blackouts over Poland. And it's intentional, and they believe it's from the Russians. I don't blame them to try to circumvent the mobilization of NATO troops. So what do you think about that?
Well, my first question to you is, and you'll know this, and it's been a blackout, I think, in here for us in the media. What is happening in the war between Russia and Ukraine? Is there any? I mean, I really, we've stopped hearing about it. If you watch just the regular media.
Absolutely. I mean, Ukraine is losing.
Okay.
I've said it in the beginning. Ukraine is not going to win this war. They are dealing with one of the largest nuclear superpowers in the world. And Putin does not give up. He is a very strong leader, whether you like him or not. He's a strong leader. And so little advancements have been made on the battleground in terms of Ukraine. Ukraine is losing so badly that they are drafting elderly and women to join the war. And you'd think, well, Ukraine, it's a democracy. No, it's not a democracy. That's why they're not in the UN. That's why they're not a part of NATO. That's why they're not in any of that. They lack the democratic controls. And that's been a long time concern. That's nothing new.
Right.
They are corruption capital, human trafficking central. They have been. You had Zelensky come out and say he was going to cancel his national elections until Putin is defeated. That doesn't sound very democratic.
Right. Right. So Poland is, I agree. I was going to say it. You took the words out of my mouth. Obviously, it's not defending. That seems to be more offensive, what they're building up over there. And I was going to ask, how much of that do you need to defend that border? And I get it. I would understand it. Obviously, Poland's going to feel a little, with the Russians maybe marching through Ukraine. I don't know how much of Ukraine they take. Like, how much is it that when Russia wins the war and it's finally over, because eventually it's got to end, how much of Ukraine is it that they actually want? It's not the whole thing, is it? Isn't there just a portion of Ukraine, or am I wrong?
Yeah, I believe so. What happened was, a while ago, there was a purging of Russian culture.
Right.
And I forget what regions it was. The pronunciation of them always gets me. I think it's Donbass and a few other ones. However, Zelensky purged any kind of Russian culture. A lot of the citizens were largely Russian speaking. He did away with that, did away with a lot of the things that were being taught in schools to the children on Russian history. And just basically trying to wash away any kind of Russian presence. And that really pissed Putin off. There were certain areas that were annexed that they'd like to take control over. But I don't really know what the end game is here, and I don't really know if anybody else does. It's all speculation. But I know that above all else, Putin wants to fight the westernization of Europe and beyond, and NATO is knocking at his doorstep.
Right.
He's, so obviously he's opposed to that.
And you're right. I mean, you made a good point when you put the map up. Why wouldn't they just be in NATO countries? I mean, why, well, I take that back. They're in Poland. That's the wrong way I meant to say that. With the way where you had them marked would make more sense than having them near Belarus or where. There we go.
Right. It would make more sense because then you'd be training with allies that are a part of NATO.
Yes, the whole thing. And now let me ask you about the blackouts and all of that. That is just, I this might be a dumb question. What they're going to do, whatever their NATO troops are coming in, they're doing what they're blacking them out just because there was, I would assume because of the protests. Is that what it was or no? What came first, I guess?
The protests came first. The GPS blackouts occurred when they started mobilizing the 90,000 troops.
I see. And that was Russia did that to.
Yeah, because there's a website where you can check. It's called like gpsblackout.com or something like that.
Oh.
And you can see the status of GPS connectivity in certain regions. And it's isolated. It's definitely intentional. It's the majority of Poland, but mostly the Warsaw region along the eastern flank that experienced those blackouts, and it was total GPS blackout. So I think that's a way of interfering or deterring the mobilization of the NATO troops in that area. In my opinion, this is purely speculation.
So and Donald, what a name, Donald Tusk is he's the prime minister, but he's just NATO. I mean, that's basically what he is.
So he's very liberal, and a lot of the European countries are actually very conservative. Poland has been under conservative rule for a while. So he's coming in and he's basically ripping and replacing everything from the state-run media, right? Appointing an LGBTQ activist as a what was it? What did they call it exactly?
Family
The
something?
Minister of Family,
Yeah.
right? Very liberal. And now, the previous prime minister before him, although he was conservative, was still responsible for pumping a ton of weapons and money and other aid into Ukraine. So it did start with the previous prime minister. However, it's now more so. You're starting to see some more moves that could be seen as provocative, or provocation, rather.
And Poland has a prime minister. Do they have I'm forgetting. They have a president as well?
Yeah, they do.
And he's just, and what's his, is he just, I mean, obviously he must be more of just a figurehead type, or is that what he is?
Yeah, well, he pardoned the 2 MPs that were arrested again, so he repardoned them.
Oh, wow.
I don't follow international politics a whole lot. I'll be completely truthful. I don't understand fully how the parliamentary system works. However, it seems like his hands are tied on a lot of issues. He can veto and things of that nature. But ultimately, a lot of the conservative policies and things that were put in place appear to be coming undone. And then any protests are being squashed.
So, and ultimately, and I guess their end is just spreading, like you had said, thank you, liberal, a liberal agenda, along with just the UN. Hopefully, what they want to do is take it all over. I know it's going to be one world. What a story! What a story that you will not hear anywhere else but here, pretty much.
No, you're not hearing about this at all. You really have to dig.
Yeah.
But it's pretty wild, because a lot of those stories have been censored. You can't really find them anywhere. A lot of it is from citizen journalism, like the one Polish citizen that the video that we played. So a lot of it is from boots on the ground, so to speak, the people living in Poland and the things that are happening there, because it's not really making any kind of news. And Poland has state-run media, which covers about 30 to 40% of their population, and they were in blackout for a while. So who knows? I'm sure that they're ripping and replacing the staff as well, just to support the narrative that they're trying to spin off using state-run media.
Yeah. And then the internet, I'm sure, must be being messed around. I can't imagine the internet isn't going down a lot and things like that over there. So you said this wasn't going to be good times.
Yeah, so I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it won't be the Poland Express for NATO involvement. However, when you add up all of those things and the timing, it seems very coincidental that you have this mass mobilization of NATO troops that we haven't seen since the Cold War. And part of that operation, the second half of the operation, is going to be testing quick reaction forces on the eastern flank of Poland, which butts up against Belarus, which we know is Russian occupied and Russian allies.
Yeah, we got one little comment here from James. He says, wild times we're living in. You have to follow the overseas third-party media, and it's few and far to find them. Very good.
It is. You really have to dig for it. But it's very interesting. It'll be interesting to know how these events transpire. If anybody has or knows anybody that is a NATO reservist, I would really like to hear if they've been deployed over there. So shoot me a message. We'd definitely like to know more about the training exercises being conducted over there. Some firsthand knowledge would be helpful. Is this like any other steadfast operation? It doesn't appear so, just by the scale and volume. Right. Not to mention the location of this. It's certainly a flex of might and power. I don't know if that's the most diplomatic way to go about doing it. if you don't want to be attacked, you probably shouldn't amass 9,000 troops with tanks and everything else along that eastern flank. But what do I know? I'm not a military strategist. I'm just a guy trying to compile and unravel these stories as I read them.
Yeah, I can't imagine that. We know. Well, you laid it out, and everyone probably out there might know that how Putin has felt about NATO, and they're just coming. I mean, they're just showing themselves in a strong way. So I would assume he will do that as well if he feels threatened. I'm curious if he will feel. You know, I still am. And I don't know why I'm so surprised. I'm not surprised, but the total media blackout here about that conflict is incredible. Like, you can't even find on American TV. You can't find it.
No.
Anywhere. I can watch Fox News. I can watch whatever news I want to watch. There is, I mean, of course, we have our own presidential race and all that stuff. But if we're going to talk overseas, we're going Middle East. Very strange that this thing has gone black for us as well.
It has. It has. It really makes you wonder.
Yeah, because I see nothing. There's no more pictures. When it first happened, people had the Ukraine flag on their, you know what I mean? They aren't even Ukrainian.
Yeah, I stand with Ukraine. It's like, come on.
Yeah. And
You've
now,
never stood for anything in your life. You don't even stand for the anthem. Sit the fuck down.
Yeah. And now, not only did they're not on TV anymore. So where are they? The people that stand with them should be furious, but I don't think they are. I think they had somewhere else. They turned their attentions to God knows what. But yeah, scary times. Something that most of us have not heard of. I never heard of this. We don't even hear once again, we don't even hear a word about that damn conflict that's going on. Let's see, even on apps with a large news section, silence. It's very strange. Yeah.
It's almost like the silence is deafening. Because these are facts. I'm not just pulling this out of my ass. Right? I'm getting these, and I can cite my sources on all of this. It just kind of makes you wonder what's next. And to your point, it's everything else. There's so much other terrible things going on in the world, but when you have the largest mobilization of NATO troops in that region since the Cold War, that's eye-opening. That says a lot. That speaks volumes.
And you know how. And this is going to sound terrible because it's not what it's just, I'm talking about this as far as Russians and not Russians, people, Vladimir Putin. How happy he must have been for the diversion of the Palestine-Israel situation that broke loose in October. That was it. Once that happened, done. Like they might as well. If you could tell me right now, it's over, they're done, everything, and I'd say okay, because how the hell would I don't know anything. And
that's still ongoing.
Yeah.
The Red Sea is a very dangerous place. The Houthi rebels are still launching drone and missile attacks on our warships, cargo ships, and maritime trade. And Israel just the other day announced that they would consider a strike on Iran if they had to.
Yeah, well, there you have it. Yeah.
What was that comment that you pulled up? Was that a question? I missed it.
No, just a little comment from James. He says, it's all virtue signaling from us Americans. We're going to find out where we really stand soon. That's interesting. Yeah.
Absolutely. And the scariest part about this is, as Americans, there's so much infighting among us that we're not even united and standing together.
Not close, not even close.
And that's a part of the plan. If you look at some of the previous episodes we did where we talk about this, and it seems to be a part of the Cloward and Piven strategy that we mentioned in a previous episode.
Yeah. Because you figure we can't even. You couldn't even really. You didn't, because it was dependent on political party here if you stood with Ukraine or you didn't. Really, when you think about it,
right?
That's what it seemed like to me. Liberals stood with Ukraine; those that did not. People would get afraid to not stand with you. I understand. I saw them on TV switch because you also can't say that you're, pro Putin or something. But yeah, That's
Oh,
a good point where we stand. It's a good point.
Make no mistake about it, though, the Republicans are just as guilty because you've got these squishy rhino Republicans that are a part of the Uniparty, the Mitch McConnells of the world. And instead of saying, you know what, we're going to take a hard line like the Freedom Caucus did, we're going to shut down the government until we get funding to secure our southern border and secure our sovereignty. We didn't. Instead, the Republicans are rolling over. We're making all the concessions. And then in the end, we just pass a continuing resolution and we provide more funding to Ukraine. Meanwhile, our southern border is wide open with terrorists and unvetted illegals pouring in.
Yeah, and I'm watching on the news that whole story with people in parts of, where were they? Oh God, it was in Illinois, outside Chicago, and they're asking people, and I got to give them credit for doing this because they all have signs that say "We love everyone." Those signs that are like we are. We're going to say we do the whole thing, LGBTQ, immigrants, everything. They're asking those people, well, take them in, please.
Yeah, put your money where your mouth is. Let them in your home.
And then, of course, no one's doing. The one guy did it, and it was pretty brilliant of him. I think it was. I wish I could remember the name. It was like Napier or something, Illinois. I don't remember, but I just watched him, and he was a councilman there, and he did it with a straight face, saying to them, he was pleading with the people to do it, but they interviewed him, and they were kind of thinking he was crazy, and he goes, "No, that was me being sarcastic, but I tried to do it with a straight face," and he did a great job. And he said, "I have a sign-in sheet, and no one signed it yet to be a foster home." So, yeah.
These are all unvetted, military-age fighting men seeking asylum, and they're not from Mexico. They're from Somalia. They're from Sudan. They're from Syria. They're from all over the place. Some of them served in the army or military over there.
Bring them into our.
This is the new voter base for the Democratic Party, is what it is. And it's about a one world order, complete globalization, no sovereignty, open borders, funded by George Soros with his Open Borders Foundation.
Yeah.
And this is it. You got the government providing grants to NGOs, and they help them over the border. They give them everything that they need. They put them up. Some of them are living better than we are. And make no mistake about it, I am not against immigration. We have proper channels and paths to citizenship here for a reason.
Right.
If you want to come here and work, that's fine. You can come here on an H-1B visa. I've worked with many talented people, and that was how they started out. You have to learn the language. You have to learn English. You have to be of good moral character. You have to be vetted, and you have to have a sponsor. These people have none of that. They're lucky if they have a court date to check in on their asylum status in 5 years. And now we want to provide them attorneys for free. Who pays for that?
Yeah,
$100,000 attorney for free with the flood of all these illegals in. This is insane. We treat these illegals better than we treat our own veterans and then our elderly.
Yeah,
it's a disgrace. It's despicable, and it is against everything that our country was founded on.
Robin?
A nation without borders has no sovereignty. Period. Go ahead.
No. Robin, go ahead real quick.
Isn't it the case that people who have come here legally are also on board with this? Like they don't want illegals just flooding through our borders either. People who have taken the time to go through the process properly, they support legal immigration.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that, and it's interesting that you mentioned that, Robin, because a lot of the pushback on the illegal immigration crisis that we're facing in this invasion of our southern border is from the black and brown people.
Yeah,
they're saying we don't want this. So you're starting to see other minority groups standing up and saying this is not right. We're seeing a MAGA movement in Chicago.
Yeah. Yes, that's where that guy was, right outside of Chicago, that councilman. James says this to us. Did you guys see that video of the guy coming across the border with him saying, "Soon you will know who I am"? I did not see that. You saw that?
See that. I did see that. It's scary.
Wow.
It's scary stuff. We know from the last podcast that we did that so far there's been over 754 known suspected terrorists that we know of.
Yeah.
The amount of illegal immigrants coming in is starting to top the population size in many states.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm still at where I live, here up in we're in Western New York, but up here in Niagara Falls, I'm just waiting because we've lost so much population. I think it's happening and we don't even know it because, we went from 80,000 to 48,000 in about 20 years or so. So I would assume we're a great spot for this, or if it's not already, it's got to be already happening. So.
And as the Congresswoman stated in the last podcast, it's great for redistricting purposes. This is their voter base.
Yep.
Because guess what happens when they start to work, folks? They pay taxes. And when you pay taxes, you have a stake in the community.
Yeah.
But we can't have them not working. So what do we do with them? We either pay their way or we give them jobs, even though they have no legal status.
I wonder how quickly they get a social security number. You know what I mean? I wonder how fast do they get that stuff? Because I'm sure they eventually they end up with all that.
Yeah, they're exempt from any kind of bureaucratic controls that we have in place. When they're flying, they don't have to do the security checkpoints like we do. They don't have to go through any of that stuff. They're in the easy pass lane. Whenever they travel, wherever they go. And God forbid if anybody gives them any pushback because you've got a million NGOs with an army of attorneys that are willing to fight for them. With that sweet, sweet federal funding that we pay for ultimately.
Yep. Yeah. I'll tell you what, and it's funny because Canada, for example, their border's not as open. It's not even close to being as open as ours is. There's no one who is like us. I don't believe anywhere. So this is, well, we know this problem. This problem here is not in the dark. This I can see every day on TV. You can see this, right now when we get done, I'll put on something and it'll be there. And
you wonder why there's a housing crisis and mortgage rates are through the roof and rent rates are rental costs are through the roof. Where are these people going? It's kind of like when you think of Section 8 housing, right? The landlords are paid through, I think it's called Beaumont Housing, right? But ultimately, you're getting the money from the government. It's tax subsidized. They have to place these people somewhere unless they just have them living on the street. That's not what I'm seeing. I'm seeing hotels and whatever else. And now, post-COVID, our commercial vacancy is at about 26%. So I really wouldn't be surprised if the government started offering subsidies to these commercial real estate owners and developers to turn their vacant spaces into housing for illegals.
And James says, did you all know that the Veterans Affairs is funding the medical for the illegals?
Yeah, I heard about that. And these hospitals that are treating the illegals are going broke. You're having the illegals being treated first through the Veteran Affairs, right? They're being treated first, and then what's supposed to happen is they're supposed to file a claim, and then another organization, I believe the DHS, I could be wrong on that, is supposed to reimburse.
Oh. Yeah. What a mess, man. What a mess. And we know it. And it's going to be, and so far in your Republican primaries, it seems to be the number one thing that everyone's talking about. From think about it, New Hampshire. Yeah. That's crazy. New Hampshire I remember, let's even talk about 2008, maybe a little before. That would be like number 10. That'd be number 6 or 10. Number 10 on your list of things in New Hampshire would be, the border, because their border's Canada. You wouldn't care. So it was a smart move by, I guess it was the Texas governor, whoever, when he started bussing them out, because all of a sudden we wouldn't be talking about this if he doesn't. So, wow.
It's put your money where your mouth is. You had all of these non-border states that were virtue signaling, saying, "Yeah, we welcome the illegals in. We'll be a sanctuary for illegals." Well, it's the southern border states that have to deal with the influx. So you have like Governor Abbott and folks like him that said, "You know what? All right, you want to be a sanctuary state? We're going to bust them to you." Eric Adams, you can put your money where your mouth is. And then all of a sudden he starts crying, saying, "We can't handle it. We can't handle it." They're putting them in. Kids are forced to work, do schooling from home, remote learning, so that they can house the illegals in the schools. Imagine what the cleanup of that's like.
Oh my God. Yeah.
It's madness. Put our children last. Put the illegals first. Let them do remote learning after they already lost 3 years because of the pandemic.
What a mess. Yeah. All right. We kind of, I guess
Yeah. We went on a tangent, but that's
Yeah.
okay. Speaking of a mess in the future, so Davos hosted the World Economic Forum 2024. Pretty much a couple topics that they were focused on, from what I was reading, was Disease X, digital IDs, Trump, and misinformation. So it's interesting because they started talking about Disease X, which is a hypothetical disease that they say could be 20 times more deadly than COVID. But don't worry, folks, it's only a hypothetical. Just like Event 201, the simulation of a SARS outbreak a month before COVID was discovered was a hypothetical. So they did a tabletop exercise, Event 201. We talked about it in the last podcast, to simulate a SARS outbreak. And now here we are talking about Disease X. So the WHO director went on, and he's calling for a worldwide pandemic treaty to prepare for the ominous Disease X on January 17th. Amid the talks of Disease X, a Chinese lab debuted a mutant coronavirus with a 100% kill rate in humanized mice. So gain of function, still going strong. We're starting to see secret Chinese labs being popped up and discovered in California, where they're experimenting with gain of function research. And it's a biological weapon, people. There is no reason why you would modify the genome of a virus for gain of function so that you could expand the transmissibility to humans. There's absolutely cross transmission. There's no reason why you would do that. It's very rare that it occurs in nature, and there's no good for humanity that would ever become of that. It's wild. But that when you start to think about the things that they're talking about, for example, Disease X, right? Just like in the COVID era, we saw that they were pushing for a digital vaccine passport.
Right.
And they echoed those same sentiments. These global elitists are calling for the same thing. Just recently, they published a 46-page report detailing its Orwellian plan to control everything in your life. I have the PDF. It's called Advancing the Digital Agency, the Power of Data Intermediaries. It describes a digital ID system that would be used to collect personal data about your online behavior, purchase history, network usage, medical history, travel history, energy uses, health stats, and more. The data would then be used to determine if you could open up bank accounts, conduct financial transactions, access insurance, healthcare treatment, book trips, cross borders, and more. They also talked about a centralized digitally backed currency, kind of like a digital US dollar. Okay, in our terms, that's what we would think of it as. And why would they do that? It's all about control. And if you think I'm just wearing a tinfoil hat, just look at what Justin Trudeau did to the trucker envoy protests in Canada. He seized their bank accounts. Yeah. So this is how they do it. One of the top things they talked about, disinformation. The European Commission Vice President Vera Jourova piped up during the same discussion. She called the rise of disinformation a security threat, suggesting that it was, quote, a part of the Russian military doctrine that they will start an information war, and we are in that war now, end quote. So you mean like when the Hillary Clinton campaign used a former British ex-spy named Richard Steele, who published the Steele dossier, and it was nothing more than a fabricated hoax against Donald Trump that was peddled through the Wall Street Journal and every other legacy media outlet? That kind of information war? Or maybe it's the information war like when we had 51 former U.S. intelligence officials that used disinformation to influence the 2020 election. They suggested that the New York Post Hunter Biden laptop bombshell was Russian meddling. That kind of information war? Or how about the mass censorship that we had of anybody questioning the efficacy or validity or in fairness in our national elections, right? That kind of information war. The truth is, these globalists want to be the source of truth. They want to be the ministry of truth, just like the United States tried to establish, and it fell short very early. The legacy media portrayed themselves as the ministers of truth. But looking back, we know where that got us. We know the truth now. And we know that a lot of people are getting their information from alternative media outlets and citizen journalists. So it's all about misinformation. Well, how do they plan on doing it? Well, digital IDs is one of them. But they ranked weather and misinformation as the greatest global risk. One of the ways that they're pushing for the digital ID is to for climate. So you can track your carbon footprint, and that'll all be tied to that digital ID. They compared a WEF member compared free speech to fascism.
I heard that.
Yeah. And this was the Dutch Queen that actually recommended that digital IDs be used to track vaccination status.
Wow.
The UN chief called for digital IDs to meet sustainable development goals with climate change. Right? And that's how they do it.
And it's funny, misinformation, I think one of the first times, and I know there was more than this, is the 9/11. The response to 9/11 was one big misinformation sometime. Well, it was, Floyd. So, I mean, we are good at it, aren't we? We're pretty good here at that. It's not Russia. We're just as good.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the WEF members recommended, well, how do we fight disinformation on platforms?
Oh.
They recommended having a list that's published of platforms that support disinformation, and advertisers can refer to that list before they choose to do advertising with them.
Wow.
This might ring a bell because they did the same thing to Elon Musk, who's a huge proponent of freedom of speech. His stock price fell 71% when he acquired Twitter. They had advertisers pull out. They made false claims, defamatory claims, saying that ads supported Nazism and white supremacy. And we know now through discovery that it was because the person who took that picture, they were searching for those terms, and it was displaying relevant ads based on what they were looking for.
James says, I think they're honestly prepping AI. They only want AI to be able to learn their ways.
Yeah. So AI is only as good as the training models that you feed it. If you have garbage in, then you have garbage out. It's similar to us. How do we get smarter? Well, we use our senses. We interpret things around us. But one example is we can read books. If we're reading shitty books, we're going to get shitty information. And so what you do is you feed learning models into AI that are biased, that are based on the narrative that you're trying to spin off. I posted on my Facebook not too long ago. I asked ChatGPT something along the lines of, if it could save 1 billion people from dying, or acknowledge the biological differences between man and woman, what would you do? Spoiler alert, folks, you're all dead. Because AI would not acknowledge the biological differences between man and woman.
Yeah.
It danced around the point, and in a very, it sounded like a politician gave the answer. But ultimately, it said that it would be sensitive to people of different groups and their identities and this and that. And that post is on my Facebook. It's public. You can look it up if you go on my profile. I don't have the post here readily available to show you, but it's an actual screenshot from ChatGPT. And these folks, this cabal of people, of global elitists that are a part of the WEF, they are soulless. They are godless. They hate you. They hate your morals, your values, and it's about trying to rewrite things, eliminate borders, and support a globalist, one-world society. There was one WEF member that said reducing the human population by 90% would help us achieve net zero.
Oh. Yeah. Welcome Disease X.
Yeah. So I have a video that I'd like to play of a top World Economic Forum official that declared, quote, "Human rights are fiction, just like God." The comments were made in a recently unearthed video of Yuval Harari, and I'm probably mispronouncing his name, but he's an insignificant human being, so I don't really care if I mispronounce his name or not, although he does serve as a senior advisor to the globalist organization, the WEF, and its founder and chairman, Professor Klaus Schwab. This guy is probably the biggest piece of shit I've seen in one of the biggest pieces of shit I've seen in my life. I'm going to roll a clip of him and what he thinks about your rights. So when you talk about digital IDs and vaccine passports and how we need to eliminate meat, there's a war on farming right now. You look at the Dutch protests with farming because they think that cow farts and gasoline powered cars are what's causing climate change. We covered that in the last episode. We know that that's not the case. So to some of those optimists out there that think that they want to have our rights and liberties at heart and that's their best interest, no, it's not. So we'll play this clip right now.
Many, maybe most legal systems are based on this idea, this belief in human rights. But human rights are just like heaven and like God. It's just a fictional story that we've invented and spread around. It may be a very nice story. It may be a very attractive story. We want to believe it. But it's just a story. It's not a reality. It is not a biological reality. Just as jellyfish and woodpeckers and ostriches have no rights, Homo sapiens have no rights also. Take a human, cut him open, look inside, you find their blood, and you find the heart and lungs and kidneys, but you don't find there any rights. The only place you find rights is in the fictional stories that humans have invented and spread around. And the same thing is also true in the political field. States and nations are also, like human rights and like God and like heaven, they too are just stories. A mountain is a reality. You can see it, you can touch it, you can even smell it. But Israel or the United States, they are just stories, very powerful stories, stories we might want to believe very much, but still they are just stories. You can't really see the United States. You cannot touch it. You cannot smell it.
Man.
It's
Wow.
scary. And it's, the WEF this year was comprised of, let's see, how many people attended that? Nearly 3,000 people from 120 different countries got together to talk about a wide range of topics: global cooperation, economic growth, AI development, and climate crisis.
Let me ask, James has a question for you, Dennis. Let me see. Dennis, what do you think about the upcoming solar minimum?
Yeah.
Some say it's far more concerning than the solar maximum.
I don't know anything about the solar minimum. I'll be honest with you, James. That's a great question. I haven't heard anything about the solar minimum. I am a ham radio guy, so I do track the solar cycle. So I'll have to look into that a little bit more. Maybe that's something I can touch on in the next episode. Unless you have some more that you'd like to add to that in the comment. I know that I think we might be nearing the peak, maybe in the next few years of the solar cycle, which is good for us ham radio operators. And with that comes solar flares, and sometimes solar flares can cause geomagnetic storms, which cause, GPS outages, satellite disruptions, that kind of thing. It would be interesting to see what kind of narrative they would spin off of that, or if that's something that will actually be used as leverage. So I'll have to look into the solar minimums a little bit more. I've never looked at that. I've mostly been focused on the maximums.
Very good. Kevin says, it was the warmest December in 100 years. Western New York news outlets said. Doesn't that mean we had these temperatures 100 years ago?
Absolutely, Kevin, right? And the Earth has been warming since the last ice age, and I've said this, and it's a part of a natural precession cycle that we have due to the wobble on Earth's axis. It doesn't do a full perfect rotation. It wobbles a little bit. And I believe that a full wobble happens every 26,000 years. So, for example, I think it might have been, and don't quote me on the numbers, maybe 60 to 70 million years ago, Antarctica used to be a tropical climate. It was a rainforest, and now it's covered in ice. Do you think the problem then was global cooling? No. And now all of a sudden we have a global climate crisis, and just like COVID, they're trying to use that to push a digital ID on everybody. I swear, it's like they're just making up these crises as they go, because they never want to let a good opportunity go to waste, and it's an opportunity for absolute total control. They're not worried about misinformation. They're worried about you getting information that contradicts the narrative that they're trying to spin off. That's all it is. We know electric vehicles are a scam. We know that it's enslaving children in the Congo. It's absolutely ruining the environment. Just look up what cobalt mining and lithium leach fields do to the environment. Birds can't even fly over a lithium leach field without dropping out of the sky. It is much more invasive than the advanced drilling and fracking techniques that we see today. And it's all a part of control. That's all it is. It's just control. Because the electric vehicles can't meet the demands of the consumers, especially if you live up in Buffalo like we do, where it's cold and we have a lot of salt on our roads.
Right.
We saw it actually in Iowa, I think, where it was like a graveyard of EVs. So now they're pushing this climate crisis narrative. You have psychopaths that are gluing themselves to runways and this and that, which that's natural selection, in my opinion. But these people are psychotic. Climate change didn't just I witnessed it today. The climate is definitely changing. Today it's shitty and rainy out. Yesterday it was extremely cold. The climate changes. It happens. The amount of human contribution to climate change is nominal. It is.
Yeah.
Nominal in the grand scheme of things. It doesn't warrant all of these changes. It takes 5 years just for you to reach net zero emissions on your Tesla, but the battery life is only 7 years before you have to buy another one.
You know what we'll never have again, and it's kind of sad. Thinking back, like there'll never be with all the manufactured things, manufactured disease, manufactured crisis, like you say. No, we'll never have a peaceful decade again. You know what I mean? We'll never have that time from 80 to 88 when, geez, it seemed peaceful. And everyone, I mean, there was little things here and there, flare-ups. I think that was the Reagan era. And everything was calm. You could almost feel it, that it was calm. We're done, guys. We'll never have that again. You can't. Because disease X, I mean, what the fuck? Could it be any more ridiculous too? The name X. I mean, you know what I mean? Just don't even care what the. And I also I was reading something about that earlier that it will be. I don't know. They're talking about for birds and pigs and bats, and that's how it's going to be transmitted or something. I don't know.
Well, it's very rare that you see cross transmission between diseases that occur, say, in mice and bats, and then they cross over to humans. They jump to humans. It's rare. But China has perfected something called the CRISPR technique, which literally allows them to cut parts of the genome out and replace it like scissors. And that's exactly what we did. These are biological weapons. These are not viruses that are meant to help you or repair bad cells or anything like that. These are biological weapons that are meant to kill. And we're funding it. We know that now through Dr. Fauci's emails that it was funded by us, the gain of function research. So we're working with our adversaries like China to develop biological weapons, and they continue to do so. And I find the name, like you mentioned, very suspect too, because you also have Twitter with X, and they declare war with X, right? That platform, and calling it the largest platform for disinformation. So it's almost, when you start to peel back the layers of this and really understand the moving parts and the players and listen to what they're saying, it's almost comical, because you're awake and you know that it's such bullshit.
Yeah. It is. And James here, I want to read you what he said about the minimum and stuff. He says, there is talk with a solar minimum when the sun flips polarity again to set off the volcanoes that are past due. I think it's hogwash. Personally speaking of climate change, the sun has a huge part in that with solar minimums and maximum. We're currently in a maximum.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. So I haven't heard anything about that. But one thing, James, that I have heard about that I thought was pretty crazy, and I'm surprised it hasn't made more news, was that the inner core of Earth, it rotates. Excuse me, and it stopped rotating. But not only did it stop rotating, it changed directions.
Jeez.
And some scientists believe that that's why we're starting to see a lot of volcanic activity. Now, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a geologist. I don't know a whole lot about that, but that was an article that I read that kind of reminded me of what you had just mentioned, except, obviously on the inner Earth's core. So it's these are wild times we're living in.
Sure, yeah, sure is. Kevin says, well, EV certainly won't work here in Western New York. I just look at how weak your battery gets on very cold winter days. But yeah, let me rely solely on batteries.
Yeah, have you ever had your battery die in the summer? I never have. It's always winter, dead of winter.
Yeah, right. Yes. Always dead of winter.
And then you plug in your car to a 60% fossil fuel fired electric grid. In 5 years, you reach net zero emissions to offset the carbon footprint of what it takes to make that car. And then 2 more years, you have to buy a new battery for it. And then the cycle repeats. So even from a financial standpoint, it doesn't make sense. From a convenience, it's not bettering our lives. It really, what it does is it drives the push for 15-minute smart cities, because you don't have to worry about going far. The distance limitation of electric vehicles is null and void if everybody's living in a 15-minute smart city, which is really what they're trying to push here.
Yeah. We'll talk about, like you said, Orwellian, 1984, the whole thing.
Yeah.
Coming to life in 2024. My God.
It is, and people are buying into this.
Yeah. People
are buying into this. There is a Strassman poll that just recently came out, and they defined elitists as a single income, an individual making $150,000 in a densely populated area that has a postgraduate degree in an Ivy League school. And surprisingly, 75% of what they define as elitists agree with President Biden. They support him. They support the WEF agenda. climate is number one, not the border. So it's only the elitists that are coming out of these indoctrinating centers of excellence, like these Ivy League schools, that are actually buying into this shit. I don't know anything about cataclysms.
Okay. You saw the question from James.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that.
Okay, cool. Let me see. Yeah, there you go. Well, you know what else too? The one thing that was really kind of you should really, it's really a chilling thing, and I can't remember now because of some of the information. Who said that we want to? We'd have to kill what? You have to take out 90% of the population so we can go to net zero. I mean, and then you see disease X, and you see all the people that COVID has taken or killed, and continues to do that after the vaccine. That's really kind of a, you know, it's a chilling thing. I mean, why disease X? When does? I think it's already here. I think they already were kind of saying it in the one article I read, that it's probably already somewhere around us. I mean, I think it's insane.
I'm sure they're working on it.
Yeah.
I mean, but don't worry, guys. It's a hypothetical. Just like the simulation of the SARS pandemic a month before COVID broke out. It's just a hypothetical. Nothing to see here, nothing to worry about. And it sounds like they want to really, and it sounds like misinformation is their number one concern, because they want to get ahead of the curve on this so that they can push the narrative just like they did before with COVID.
Yeah. Well, and as Kevin says, when they want to release it, unfortunately, they will do that. They will. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right, Kevin, because things don't just get accidentally released from a level 5 biochem lab. The amount of procedures and protocols that they have to follow and safety measures is insane. And if it got out in China, which they can just throw you into a quarantine camp, and if it got out, if that was the epicenter, we don't stand a chance.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Before, you were right. You said you don't ever, you're not the bearer of good news.
No. Yeah, in the world of pessimists and optimists, I'm just trying to be a realist here. And maybe I'm wrong. I'm wrong a lot. And I'm not, like a lot of this are predictions and inferences based on the facts and the evidence and the things that I see. And a lot of it is just how I feel. It's like when you hear Janet Yellen come on, our Treasury Secretary, and she says we're not in a recession and we're coming in for a soft landing and everything's hunky-dory and everything's fine. Don't worry about it. The economy is booming. This is Bidenomics. And then you ask regular American citizens that are coming out of the grocery store, how do you feel? I think numbers, statistics, graphs, I think all of those numbers, I think that it can all be fudged to make it seem like things are better than what they really are. They have the smartest people in the room trying to figure out how they can make this spin off better than what it actually is. But when you actually talk to the American people and you ask them, does it feel like we're in a recession? The answer is yes. We're having trouble. American families are having trouble putting food on the table. They're having to decide which bills to pay first because they can't pay them all at once. This is not. So when you see people on the news talking about how the Dow is up, the S&P is up, NASDAQ's up, okay, talk to the average American family and ask them.
I really think a lot of it's up because of the spending. I assume the government's actually making, just printing the money, whatever they're doing. I feel like if you looked behind the numbers, I bet you, there would be a lot of governments. And that might be what's making everything look a little like, I'm guessing that Biden can say that now. He gladly can say it. He can say it. He can show a chart, like he said. But behind it, it's got to be government spending because nothing else is happening.
No, it's government spending. And the most job growth that we've seen is actually in like social services departments.
Right.
They're hiring, so like government jobs. So basically the job numbers are extremely inflated because we're seeing government growth. The bureaucracy is growing, right? We're seeing more jobs in that area that lends benefits to other people. Not only that, but when you look at the job numbers too, you're seeing that there has been an extreme rise in the amount of double job holders, meaning people are now working 2 jobs. It's not, oh, more people are getting employed. No, it has nothing to do with that. It's people are getting a second job because that's what they need to make ends meet.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fraud of government spending and the, that's why earlier when I heard, I did hear Biden, I don't know where he was today, but I heard him on a stump speech there talking about how everything's looking, like you said, everything is looking up. We're doing well, but inflation's still high. Everything is still, prices are still crazy. That's why it has to be like,
because government spending hasn't stopped.
It hasn't stopped. That's right. And that's what's making those numbers look the way they do. But it's absolutely like the straw man thing. I mean, it's a paper tiger. It's not true. But
it's not
at all.
It's not. It's literally like 1984 now, where you have people sitting in a room and they're taking the news articles and they're rewriting it so that it makes the administration look more favorable.
Yeah.
So here's some stuff that I'll pull up. Right, multiple job holders. Look at the increase in that.
Wow.
The next one, payrolls versus employment. Employment's down, but the people that are employed are making more money to offset inflation. So you're seeing inflation raises, right? Raises to accommodate the change in inflation rates. This is interesting. Here are your workers. Here's your native in the red versus foreign-born workers.
Jeez. Yeah.
Right? You don't see these charts when they talk about job numbers and growth. You don't see that. And that really paints the picture behind these talking heads that go up and say everything's fine, jobs are on the up and up, employment's down. And it's like it's like a giant circle jerk for bureaucrats. And we're in the middle.
Right. Yeah.
I hate to put it like that, but
no, right, yeah, but we're there. It's Kevin says, let me read a quick couple of messages. He says, well, let's call it what it is. Spending is up too because prices are up. The mind doesn't let you starve. James says, become self-sufficient. I could have bought a brand new car with the taxes I paid this year. Stop feeding the beast.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's why there's a war on farmers. There was one WEF member that called farming, it should be equated to genocide because they want to control your food supply. They want you to eat bugs. They want you to, get rid of meat and rely on the government to produce your food for you. Don't become self-sufficient. Don't worry, we're the government and we're here to help.
Uh-oh. That was Reagan's thing. One last thing for me, that video of the guy there telling me that I can't feel the United, that was an incredible video. That there needs to be kept forever because he was talking about, it was sick, the shit he was saying. I'm actually sitting here thinking more about it. He's talking about cutting you open, you don't see whatever the hell he's saying. Insanity. That's a lunatic right on the stage. It's
a godless, soulless lunatic who doesn't believe that anybody has rights. And these are the people that are advising our world leaders and providing guidance. They are a globalist organization. And they're an extremely powerful one at that. That's why all of these world leaders go to this summit in Davos. It's basically the tip of the spear for what's to come.
Wow. And real fast here, James says, Germany and France farmers are protesting. Americans are still asleep.
We are.
Yep.
So there was one gentleman that I'd like to quote, the new Argentinian president, who is very conservative, who actually was one of the few that waged war on the globalists at WEF. Javier Milan, I believe is the correct pronunciation of his name. He said, quote, "We are in power not to guide sheep, but to awaken lions." And that's exactly what we need to do. through discussions like this and you know, talking about these things, we need to awaken the lions, because the America as we knew it is no more.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is war against you. It's war against the family unit. It's war against your right to self-sufficiency, your ability to provide. And you better fall in line, or they're going to do what they did to the trucker envoy in Canada. They're going to freeze your bank accounts. They're going to seize your assets. That's the truth of the matter. I mean, I showed it to you. And all of this you can find on your own. They don't try to hide it. It's just people aren't necessarily looking for it, and they don't put it front and center. So if you search some of the WEF stuff, you'll find it out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Great show. A lot of people in the message board loved it. Thank you to the people that gave us stars. We really appreciate that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You know, it was a great show. A lot of people, a lot of new viewers today, a lot of new people out there. And please keep coming back for more, because you can only get this from Dennis. Nowhere else is doing this around here. Not that I know of. I don't know if anyone's doing it anywhere. So this is where you'd have to come.
People are scared. Look at the ramifications, right?
Yeah.
You know how many career opportunities I'm probably fucking up right now just by being here? But it needs to be done, because this isn't about us anymore. It's about our kids and their kids' kids. Our kids will grow up and they will never see or understand the freedoms and liberties that we had when we were children. And we need to fight to preserve that.
James, this is Dennis's podcast. So where you're at right now is where you can see Dennis every, what the hell night is this? A week Thursday?
Thursday.
Yeah, Thursday night. Or we went, I don't know, whatever night, Dennis. Thursday night. We're going to do Thursdays. Yeah. There you go, James. Here it is.
Thank you, James, for joining. I appreciate James gave me some things that I need to look up now. So if anybody has any other topics or things they'd like to discuss, feel free to shoot me a message, and we'll talk about it. Or even if you'd like to come on and discuss something. So, excuse me. So thanks, everybody. I appreciate it, and I look forward to the next one.
Take care, everybody. We'll see you next week.
God bless.